Hello, everybody, and Merry Christmas. I'm your host of Faith Unaltered, David Russell, and I am here with my co-host today, Tyler Fowler, and my good friend and host at times, co-host at times. Yeah, we do that. Dale Glover. We are here to talk about the Zeitgeist. We have some fun. We're gonna have some fun with it. The reason we're doing it again, we do see that many people are still asking questions about this crazy movie that came out in 2007. So we're going to tackle some of the issues that it brings forth today, and we hope you guys have a good time. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, David Russell, and this is another Faith Unaltered. And again, Merry Christmas to all you guys out there. I'm your host, David Russell, and I'm here with Tyler Fowler and Dale. So, guys, how has your week been and what's been going on?
What's up?
Hey,
Go
what's up?
ahead, Dale.
Yeah, just basically grading for me, grading final exams and stuff like that. Nothing exciting to really mention. Looking forward to Christmas, but yeah. How about you guys?
I'm
So,
the
how?
same, man.
Yeah,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead, Tyler.
David.
No, go ahead, Tyler.
No, I was just going to say that I don't know if y'all can hear me or not very well. I hope so, but basically we're down on internet and I'm running from my phone. And so if y'all, that's why I'm not on camera. But if you, yeah, I'm excited. We're going to do a Zeitgeist episode tonight. We're going to debunk it, as many people have in the past. But as David said a while ago, there are still people talking about Zeitgeist and it's still getting some kind of fame in more ways than one, I guess you could say. But we're here to debunk it. We're going to play a couple video clips. We're going to go through the arguments and examine them and really show you guys and gals the truth of the claims that are made in this horrible, horrible movie. So, David?
Right on, dude. I agree. I mean, it is pretty horrible. And one of the reasons is that, I've had several people come up to me at my work and ask me about this movie. And so I decided, you know what, this thing is still running. And so I looked it up, and sure enough, there's still people commenting on it today about how much it's changed their life. So I do want to deal with some of these claims. Let's pretty much get into it. Dale, I think you've got the first thing to start playing, right?
Oh, okay, sure. So yeah, I guess for my introduction, I'm not going to waste a lot of time talking. I prepared like a very short, less than 10-minute video clip. Now, one thing I just want to say up front before I play that though is because I know David, the inspiration for this show is that you have some work colleagues that actually believe in the truth of the Zeitgeist movie. So yeah, today's show is going to be fun. It's going to be polemical and stuff like that. But I do want to bear in mind, look, my video is kind of polemical and stuff like that. But I do respect that, some people actually believe this. So I don't want to be overly offensive towards them. Just try to look past the polemics and look to the substance of our points, kind of thing. But yeah, with that said, let the games begin. All right.
Would it be bad if I said that I want to be overly offensive to the people that still believe this because the director of Zeitgeist was overly offensive to me? Is that bad? Is that trading evil for evil?
It's not bad at all. No, because the Zeitgeist movie is ridiculous and it's insane. Some people haven't studied it, so like I don't want to turn those guys off if we're trying to witness to them. But anyways, let's get into polemics. So all right, so here's a little video that I made.
Look out, you funny-lay atheists and skeptics. I know you really like the Zeitgeist movie and you think that it's chock full of educational content and historically accurate information that just disproves Christianity and shows that Jesus is really just another pagan myth, and all the myths are all the same as the story of Jesus in terms of his life and ministry. Well, all I can say is buckle up, skeptics. You're in for a bumpy ride.
Moving on. Does it ever bother you that the story of a man who was born of a virgin, was resurrected, your bio was something that was going around the Mediterranean for at least 1,000 years? We've got Krishna, who was in India 1,000 years before Christ. Krishna was a carpenter, born of a virgin, baptized in a river.
Are you saying that was written in history? That was written down in history?
Absolutely. There's the Persian god Mithras 600 years before Christ, born December 25th, performed miracles, resurrected on the third day, known as the Lamb, the Way, the Truth, the Light, the Savior, Messiah.
Stop! Blasphemer!
Hi, thank you very much for coming today. My name is Shane. I'm a history major here at UCF. And my question has to do with the religious history in the Mediterranean. And it appears as though the Jesus' bio, as it was going around the Mediterranean for 1,000 years before him, as well as, for example, Osiris's son Horus has pretty much the exact same bio. And I was wondering how you reconcile your faith and historical accounts of the time.
You know, I have to say, in all gentleness, that that's just based on misinformation. This is garbage that's spread on the internet that just isn't true.
In the introduction to Bart Ehrman's book, Did Jesus Exist?, he says, I am not a Christian, and I have no interest in promoting a Christian cause with a Christian agenda. I am an agnostic with atheist leanings. But as a historian, I think evidence matters, and the past matters. And for anyone to whom both evidence and the past matter, a dispassionate consideration of the case makes it quite plain Jesus did exist. Those who care about evidence follow the facts rather than dismiss them. The evidence is right there before their eyes. So why don't you take it from here, Bart?
I think that atheists have done themselves a disservice by jumping on the bandwagon of mythicism, because, frankly, it makes you look foolish to the outside world. If that's what you're going to believe, you just look foolish.
But Bart, is there any historical evidence for Jesus' existence?
I have a whole book on it.
So there's a little bit of evidence.
There is a lot of evidence. There is so much evidence.
Like how much evidence?
It is not. I know in the crowds you all run around with, it's commonly thought that Jesus did not exist. Let me tell you, once you get outside of your conclave, there's nobody who. This is not even an issue for scholars of antiquity.
But surely there must be some scholars of antiquity who doubt Jesus' existence.
There is no scholar in any college or university in the Western world who teaches classics, ancient history, New Testament, early Christianity, any related field who doubts that Jesus existed.
But Bart, what are the reasons that scholars give for Jesus' existence?
The reason for thinking Jesus existed is because he is abundantly attested in early sources. That's why.
A lot of stuff you mentioned during your talk, or you mentioned some of the
Son of God stories that came before, like the Osiris story and everything. I don't know if you're familiar with a movie called Zeitgeist.
Oh God.
Okay, I know. I'm not. Wait. I'm not in favor of this movie. In fact, I think that I would just get your take on the first part of that movie that's about that, and which parts of it should not be paid attention to.
The whole
so
film,
that I can kind of go to people and say
the whole film and all copies of it should be burned.
Okay, I agree with that too. So it's just hard because I have atheists actually come up to me all the time saying, you really have to see this movie, and it kind of,
And that's a problem. That movie pisses me off for that very reason, because you have someone like it ends up in Religulous, where you had a perfectly decent movie where he's making good arguments, and you could have Bill Maher making this Jesus myth argument well, right? He could have given a correct one. Instead, he gave a complete bullshit asshole lame argument because he believes the Zeitgeist film. And that's the kind of example of why people think myth theory is bogus, is because that's what the myth theory they hear is that bullshit version of it. And so that thing, as a historian, as a scholar, it pisses me off, because now I have to do double time to try and fix all the mess they've created by tainting everyone's brain with the wrong version of the theory that's easily refuted and easily ridiculed. And so that's what I have to face. I walk in and try to talk about the Jesus myth theory, and they're all like attacking Zeitgeist as if I'm promoting that. And that pisses me off, because it makes my life a lot harder. It fucks with scholarship, and I just wish people would not do that.
Horus was born on December 25th of the Virgin Isis Mary. His birth was accompanied by a star in the east, and upon his birth he was adored by 3 kings. At the age of 12, he was a prodigal child teacher, and at the age of 30, he was baptized by a figure known as Anup, and thus began his ministry. Horus had 12 disciples he traveled about with, performing miracles such as healing the sick and walking on water. Horus was known by many gestural names such as the Truth, the Light, God's Anointed Son, the Good Shepherd, the Lamb of God, and many others. After being betrayed by Typhon, Horus was crucified, buried for 3 days, and thus resurrected.
All right, now I'll ask a question. Horus, your mother's name was Isis, right?
Mama. Yeah, that was Mama, all right. Named herself after her third cousin twice removed.
Right. And she was a virgin when you were born, right?
Psst, hey, boy. Has anyone told these characters about the birds and the bees? Now look here, look here. You there. Yeah, you. Come on over here, propeller head. I'm going to show you something over in the family room here that ain't fit for the eyes of a lady. Nice boy when he don't hear a word you say. Now, you see this picture here? This here's a family portrait. At least I wanted to make him. It's showing my poor old dad Osiris laying there dead, while my mama Isis is getting in a family way by way of him in the form of a hawk. Now, let me ask you something, boy. Does that look like it'd result in a virgin birth?
I guess not. Why's that censor block there?
Boy, ain't you paid attention? I said this was a family room. It was sharp as a bowling ball.
Now wait a minute. I know for a fact that your mother Isis was worshipped as a virgin.
And when exactly was that supposed to have been happening? Before or after I was born?
Structure. Attis of Phrygia, born in the Virgin Nana on December 25th, crucified, placed in a tomb, and after 3 days was resurrected.
The victim, a shepherd boy named Attis, was the son of King Croesus of Lydia. According to the witnesses, Attis was crucified on a tree during an event called Black Friday. Contrary to the report Dr. E had received, Attis had not been crucified. Instead, Attis had castrated himself because he was upset over the death of his girlfriend of many years, Sybil.
What had happened is that this poor guy was about to marry his girlfriend, and before that could happen, some monster named Agadistus showed up at the wedding and caused mass hysteria. Unfortunately, his girlfriend died, and Attis got so upset that he committed suicide.
All right, so I think that's good enough for the intro. So obviously, I just selected the first two, Horus and Attis from Zeitgeist, and I selected two claims: the virgin birth, and also with Attis, the death by crucifixion and resurrection, and it's total lies. Yeah. It's not true. So, that was my intro. So over to you guys.
And once we get into the David's actually going to start playing clips, and some of those clips. So whenever they were talking about Horus, not the cartoon, but Horus and Attis, that was actually from the movie Zeitgeist. And so David now is going to play part of the movie, David, and then you're going to give some commentary on what Jordan Maxwell said during this intro.
Right. We're going to just start showing you the movie now. I think this is a good time to actually get into it. I love that satire, Dale. That was good. We need some laughs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you, Dale. There's a lot of people that believe this stuff, and this is and you saw it. You saw it even when they address Carrier and go after the reality that Jesus actually existed. I mean, you see this. It's ridiculous, but the zeitgeist is worse than ridiculous almost. So,
and
I'm going to
think about this too.
Here.
Well, think about this too.
Ty.
Bill Maher believes this, and just think about the people that he influences on a daily. You know what I'm saying? And so at some time, and I'm sure a lot of people had seen that clip that was in Dell's video. I mean, this stuff is spreading like cancer. And I'm so glad that, not only us, but there have been multiple people now on YouTube debunk these claims. It's just ridiculous that people are still being influenced by this movie.
Yeah, it looks like David's gone. So yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you there. Tyler, I think that a lot of the claims are just outright lies. They're fabrications. So I'm not mincing words. It's not, they made an innocent mistake or they're exaggerating. They're just lies. And people need to know that. So yeah.
And the problem is it's a web of lies. Sorry, I'm eating pizza here, guys, because this is just, one of those occasions. But I'm not drinking milk out of a bag, but
eating pizza out of a box.
That's right. Yeah, and I'm about ready to get started with it. But I do want to say that, I mean, it's a bunch of web of lies that sound good, and there are associations that will tickle your ears. Let's say, there are associations that you can say, "Oh, that makes sense," but that's all they are. They're association fallacies without evidence, and that's the biggest problem you have here. So even though it may sound cool and smart and disproving Jesus and gets people all high and mighty on what they believe, but I don't know, it's ridiculous, and that's why we're here tonight. And without further ado, I'm going to start the movie.
Spirituality is a particular term which actually means dealing with intuition. In the theistic tradition, there is a notion of clinging into a word. A certain act is regarded as displeasing to divine principles. A certain act is regarded as pleasing for the divine whatever. In the tradition of non-theism, however, it is very direct that the case history are not particularly important. What is actually important is here and now. Here and now. Now is definitely now. We try to experience what is available there on the spot. There's no point in thinking that the past did exist that we could have now. This is now. This very moment. Nothing mystical, just now, very simple, straightforward. And from that nowness, however, arises a sense of intelligence, always, that you are constantly interacting with the reality one by one, spot by spot, constantly. We actually experience fantastic precision, always. But we are threatened by the now, so we jump to the past or the future. Paying attention to the materials that exist in our life, all these choices takes place all the time, but none of them are regarded as bad or good per se. Everything we experience are unconditional experience. They don't come along with a label by saying this is regarded as bad, this is good. But we experience them, but we don't actually pay heed to them properly. We don't actually regard that as that we are going somewhere. We regard that as a hassle, waiting to be dead. Waiting to be dead. Waiting to be dead. Waiting to be dead. That's the problem. And that is not trusting the nowness properly, that what is actually experienced now possessed a lot of powerful things. It is so powerful that we can't face it. Therefore, we have to borrow from the past, invite future all the time.
Your government, your the more you begin to investigate what we think we understand, where we came from, what we think we're doing, the more you begin to see we've been lied to. We've been lied to by every institution. What makes you think for 1 minute that the religious institution is the only one that's never been touched? The religious institutions of this world are at the bottom of the dirt. The religious institutions in this world are put there by the same people who gave you your government, your corrupt education, who set up your international banking cartels. We have been misled away from the true and divine presence in the universe that men have called God. I don't know what God is, but I know what he isn't. And unless and until you are prepared to look at the whole truth, and wherever it may go, whoever it may lead to, The more you educate yourself, the more you understand where things come from, the more obvious things become, and you begin to see lies everywhere. You have to know the truth and seek the truth, and the truth will set you free.
All right, folks, that's the first one. I wanted to start with Jordan Maxwell's quote here. Tyler just dropped off, but yeah, I wanted to start with Jordan Maxwell's quote because he says some pretty interesting things, and it kind of sets the tempo if you um if you notice, right?
Okay.
It sets this tempo of, he doesn't know what God is, but he knows that the corruption, the religion's corrupt, and our education is corrupt. So what the heck is he? Does he have the correct view now? Is this what he's trying to say? And it's so funny that he actually uses scripture to deny the scripture, right? To deny that who Jesus is, right? So the truth shall make you free is straight out of the scriptures, right? So I mean, I think it's telling, right? He says he doesn't know what God is, but I know what he isn't, right? So how does he know that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I'll be honest. I skip over that intro part. I always just go straight to the parallel thing or whatever. But
right,
yeah, it's obviously he is trying to make a truth claim. So he is trying to imply that what his thesis here is in fact true. He's trying to make a conspiracy theory, and obviously we haven't got to it yet, so I don't know. But basically, his theory is: look, Jesus is just a pagan myth, and is copied from various pagan myths, cobbled together. And the second part of his thesis related to Jesus is that this is all explainable through astronomy, and certain astronomical objects explain the story of Jesus and stuff like that. So that's what we're getting to.
So my whole thing is like he's asserting a notion of God throughout the whole thing, right? He's like saying we got away from the divine. That entails that he knows something about the divine, right? I mean, to even make this claim shows that he has to know a little bit about the the divine. But he says he knows what God isn't. He doesn't know what God is, but he knows what he isn't. So I mean, that he's just contradicting himself right there. So it blows my mind that people take this serious when all you have to do is think a little bit about what he's saying in this first section. And it's really funny that Jordan Maxwell is an interesting character. Okay, so I was introduced to his works not only through this movie, but a friend of mine at work again came up to me and was like, "Hey, you got to listen to this. You got to listen to Jordan Maxwell. You got to do this." And I said, "Okay." So I did, and I was like, "All right." So I told my friend, "Hey, let's get together and go over some of this stuff." So we did, and we had some very good conversations. However, I told my friend, I said, "Hey, I'm going to reach out to him and challenge him to a debate." Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I did so, and I got a response. And that response was, read my books, pay the money, and maybe we'll talk.
Okay. Yeah.
I said, well, I know the content of what you're saying. Why don't we have a debate about the contents of your book? And that's not what he wanted. So, it just, that goes a long way that, shows you something there. So Jordan Maxwell is just, like I said, he's an interesting character. He's all about the money. He's all about buy my books. It has nothing to do with the truth. So I can boldly say that because that's how he dealt with me. So Tyler, you got anything, man?
One thing. Okay. Oh,
go ahead, Del. Go ahead.
One thing, I guess, because I always just skip over this little intro part when I watched it. But one thing that's kind of interesting, he's saying, I don't know what God is, but I know what God isn't. There are a lot of philosophers who will try to define God with negative properties, like God, we know God is not this and stuff. It's popular in like mysticism. And the guy who's made this video, as well as his main source, RHS, are New Agers and into this kind of mystical stuff a bit. So yeah, David or Tyler, like, have you guys what are your guys' thoughts on that notion of God, or that approach to knowing what God is?
What do you mean exactly, Bill? Like, whenever you say mystical, like, where are we talking like an Eastern Orthodox sense, or what do you mean?
So I guess in the New Ager sense, because these guys are New Agers, but like it's in this sense that he makes this quote: "Look, we can't positively define God or understand or know God, his attributes, but we can know God based on what he's not. You know, he's not a human, he's not finite. So, like, if you define God, you would define him negatively with the properties that he doesn't have or something."
That doesn't make much sense to me, just on the surface. Now, granted, I haven't done a lot of study into this, but if you're defining God by negation, right, then it seems at the same time you would have to have some kind of positive affirmations about God being giving God what is the definition of God, right? And in our sense, in the Christian theistic sense, it is a personal being that has basically created everything, right? And so just a rough intro to God there for those who don't know. But at the same time, if the Christian God is the true God, right, then you have to define him by positive. He is personal, for instance. And just so many different things like that, you know, and that's why it doesn't make much sense to me. We can know God by claiming what he's not. Well, you know something by what it is, not what it's not, right?
Gotcha. Awesome.
That's just my surface
Right. I agree with you, Tyler, and I think Dale does too. I think that we all hold to the idea that good can exist without evil, but evil can't exist without good, right? So
evil's a corruption of good.
Right,
So, yeah.
exactly. So you would have to know what the good is first to be able to kind of identify the evil, right? So that's kind of like that whole notion, that philosophical notion, without getting too deep into it. But that's my answer too, Dale.
All right, cool.
You know, and my question is just off the top. It's like, well, how do you know that God isn't what you're saying he's not? You know what I mean? Like, again, positive affirmation has to come in somewhere at that point, because again, how do you know what you know about your God, right?
Yeah. I just think it's also so funny that Maxwell is like, educate yourself, yet every form that he would use to educate himself is corrupt to him. So how does he know what he's getting? Right? So that's my spiel on Maxwell. We're gonna get a quote here from Mr. Massey here. So hang tight. Let's go.
The Egyptologist Gerald Massey.
The great Egyptologist. What are you talking about, man? See, this cracks me up. All right, so you use Jordan Maxwell, fail, right? You use that moron. Okay, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I'm a Christian. I shouldn't be that.
You can be
negative.
Truthful though.
Oh
right?
man, yeah, but you know, I'm not going to insult the guy, but he did try to make me buy his stuff before he would actually have a discussion with me. But Massey was formally educated in English poetry and not Egyptology. And the reason they use this quote from Massey is because Massey is kind of the root of these ideas, who was probably inspired by other, skeptics at the time. But Massey was huge into Egyptology, but he was never formally educated in it. And archaeology has far surpassed him, and don't even consider him as a valid source. So the fact that people still hang on to this guy who is a poet and not a Egyptologist, and they believe his claims about Egyptology, it goes a long way. It says a lot about where we are as a society, I think, as well, because I think we want to believe what we want to believe sometimes. We'll believe what's fashionable and what we want rather than what's the truth. And unfortunately, those type of ideas get halfway around the world before truth gets a chance to lace up its boots. So anything you guys want to say on that?
Just so for the sake of the audience, because I'm seeing in the comments like people aren't familiar with this movie and stuff like that, or what's kind of going on. So just to kind of summarize, so at this point, what we're doing, Gerald Massey, he's one of the main sources, as David Russell was saying, right, as to where these notions come from for the Zeitgeist movie, and he was around in the late 1800s. So the main point here is, number one, he was not an Egyptologist. Zeitgeist lied to you about that, about his credentials. Secondly, he's 100 years out of date. There is no modern scholar with a PhD in Egyptology or history or anything who agrees with what he's saying here. So I think in a nutshell, that's the only point I would contribute about this Gerald Massey part.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. You guys cleared it up. So.
All right, moving right along.
Because I got to tell you the truth, folks. I got to tell you the truth. When it comes to bullshit, big time, major league bullshit, you have to stand in awe of the all-time champion of false promises and exaggerated claims, religion. Think about it. Religion has actually convinced people that there's an invisible man living in the sky who watches everything you do every minute of every day. And the invisible man has a special list of 10 things he does not want you to do. And if you do any of these 10 things, he has a special place full of fire and smoke and burning and torture and anguish, where he will send you to live and suffer and burn and choke and scream and cry forever and ever till the end of time.
All right, we got Carlin, right?
Oh, you should have played. You should have played the rest of it.
Okay, hold on.
But he loves you. He loves you. He loves you and he needs money. He always needs money. He's all powerful, all perfect, all knowing, and all wise. Somehow just can't handle money. Religion takes in billions of dollars. They pay no taxes, and they always need a little more. Now, you talk about a good bullshit story. Holy shit.
All right, you can pause it. So, yeah, George Carlin.
Oh. Yeah.
Hey, you was gonna say something, David. Like,
no, yeah. So yeah, we get another false assertion. This right here tells you where this is going. Right. This is not an attack on religion. This is directly an attack on Christianity. And another reason I wanted to bring this up is for the simple fact is that there's a lot that has to do with this anti-holiday crowd stuff that's in there. You know, a lot of these comparisons that will come up are the same ones that Alexander Hyssop used, and also many others, especially our friends in the Torah observant community that want to say that we're pagans because we celebrate a pagan holiday and Christmas is a pagan holiday. So another reason why I wanted to address this is to actually show some of these historical sources that actually don't say what this video is claiming. Horus wasn't born on the 25th. There's actually, nowhere in history you're going to find that. So I mean, there's so much there, but Carlin right away he comes out of the bat misrepresenting Christianity. We don't believe God's in the sky. There's nowhere Christianity talks about that. You could say it's religion all you want, but you're attacking specifically Christianity. And we don't believe God is some guy in the sky that's watching everything you do every single day. He knows everything you're going to do. He knows it before you're going to do it. So, I mean, there's a lot of things here that are being misrepresented right out the gate. So we see some logical fallacies already, and baseless assertions, evidential less assertions. Dale?
Yeah, so on this part again, so I don't think, obviously it's a misrepresentation of what Christians believe. So I guess this part is just kind of indicative as a primer as to how this guy treats religious issues or religion in general. It's kind of just the standard like internet atheist or skeptic type deal. But yeah, this is just sort of a primer. It's not really a part of his main thesis or what the video is about. It's just kind of trying to prime people to be religion's stupid or something like that.
Yeah.
No, you're right, Dale. Go ahead, David.
No, go ahead, Tyler.
Go ahead, bro.
Oh, I was gonna let you go, man. I was just wrapping it up.
Oh, well, you guys said everything you want to say on George Carlin. That's cool. Go to the next thing.
Yeah. One other thing though is I want to get us to the next part, because I think we're gonna get into the substance of the video, and even though I think this, like you said, it's a primer. It's pointing you to the direction they're gonna go. It's not part of their main substance, but you can pretty much tell what you're in for here. So, all right.
This is the sun. As far back as 10,000 BC, history is abundant with carvings and writings reflecting people's respect and adoration for this object. And it is simple to understand why, as every morning the sun would rise, bringing vision, warmth, and security, saving man from the cold, blind, predator-filled darkness of night. Without it, the cultures understood, the crops would not grow, and life on the planet would not survive. These realities made the sun the most adored object of all time. Likewise, they were also very aware of the stars. The tracking of the stars allowed them to recognize and anticipate events which occurred over long periods of time, such as eclipses and full moons. They in turn cataloged celestial groups into what we know today as constellations. This is the cross of the zodiac, one of the oldest conceptual images in human history. It reflects the sun as it figuratively passes through the 12 major constellations over the course of a year. It also reflects the 12 months of the year, the 4 seasons, and the solstices and equinoxes. The term zodiac relates to the fact that constellations were anthropomorphized, or personified, as figures or animals. In other words, the early civilizations did not just follow the sun and stars, they personified them with elaborate myths involving their movements and relationships. The sun, with its life-giving and saving qualities, was personified as a representative of the unseen creator or God, God's Son, the light of the world, the savior of humankind.
Do you know that there are over...
All right. Dale, you got anything on this notion of the sun? Sorry about the ads, guys. It's my wife.
No problem. Yeah, so this is the first substantive claim that he's trying to make, and look, we've got the 12 signs of the zodiac, so it's definitely true. Ancient people looked up at the stars and had constellations and that sort of thing at a certain point in time. A lot of ancient peoples worshipped the sun, S-U-N. They showed, for example, Akhenaten, who was a lot of skeptics will say he was the world's first monotheist in Egypt. He worshipped the Aten, the sun disk, or the Egyptians, they had Ra, the sun god, and stuff like that. So that part's true. But look what he's trying to set up here. God's son, S-U-N. Well, that sounds like the Christian claim, the Son of God, God's Son, S-O-N. And he's making this simplistic equation as though the ancient people spoke English or something. God's Son is the same as the S-U-N, Son. So that's the major flaw so far, I guess, is he's trying to set it up that like the Son is the same as the Son of God, S-O-N, because they sound the same in modern English, a language that didn't exist until centuries after Jesus was alive and stuff like that. So
yeah, so like one thing that I notice is his assertion that ancient humans pretty much are scared of the dark, right? So like the sun gives us life, saving power to mankind, and I'm just like, no, it was just as feared as the night was. I mean, people made coverings so they didn't get burned. I mean, the sun killed too. It wasn't the moon was also adored because evening brought rest and fellowship. So that's one of the biggest things I observed too. Tyler?
Well, I was just going to say, piggybacking on what Dale said about God's Son and Son of God, all these different things in English. What's interesting is the New Testament was written in Koine Greek, and this would make absolutely no sense to a New Testament writer or even a person in a Hellenized Jew or even the Romans at that time. The Greek word for son is helios. The Greek word for son, S-O-N, is huios. They sound nothing similar. And so I just, applaud Dale for making that connection that, look, you're talking about a language that came around how long ago, guys? 1600s was the more formal, what we're related to now in modern English.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little before that. But I like that point, though.
Awesome. Cool.
Right on. Let's continue.
ADHD and other behavioral challenges.
Likewise, the 12 constellations represented places of travel for God's Son, and were identified by names, usually representing elements of nature that happened during that period of time. For example, Aquarius, the water bearer, who brings the spring rains. This is Horus. He is the sun god of Egypt of around 3000 BC. He is the sun anthropomorphized, and his life is a series of allegorical myths involving the sun's movement in the sky. From the ancient hieroglyphics in Egypt, we know much about this solar messiah. For instance, Horus, being the sun or the light, had an enemy known as Set, and Set was the personification of the darkness or night. And, metaphorically speaking, every morning Horus would win the battle against Set, while in the evening Set would conquer Horus and send him into the underworld. It is important to note that dark versus light, or good versus evil, is one of the most ubiquitous mythological dualities ever known, and is still expressed on many levels to this day.
All right, pause it.
Broadly speaking, the story of Horus is as follows. Horus was born on December 25th.
All right, so I just want to address this first claim in Zeitgeist. So as we just heard, one of the first claims made about Horus in Zeitgeist was that he is in constant battle with his uncle and brother Set, and would dominate when the sun would come up and would be defeated by Set when the sun went down. Problem is, I have not found any sources to affirm this. What I have found is that Horus and Set were indeed portrayed to battle, given the fact that Set killed his brother and Horus's father Osiris, But the rivalry was because Horus was dedicated to avenging his father's death, as well as to fight for the throne of Osiris and become the ruler of Egypt. Sources also claim not that Set was a personification of the night and Horus a personification of the day, but rather Set was lord of the red land, or the desert, and Horus was lord of the black land, the floodplain around the Nile River. These colors reflect the fact that the desert sands have a reddish hue, and the land around the Nile turned black when the annual floodwaters receded. And so this is just an absolute straight up lie that makes the story sound good from the Zeitgeist point of view, but has absolutely no basis in reality whatsoever.
Dale?
Nothing really to add to what Tyler said. I guess other than that, yeah, obviously he's equating it with this forces of light, Horus as God's son on the forces of light. And then Set is kind of like the Satan, the forces of darkness stand-in. So that's the thing that he's trying to establish. But as Tyler said, that's totally not true. That's not what Egyptian mythology is talking about here.
Right. So we get this first claim, born on December 25th, right? I'm going to play it until all the, I guess, most of the claims are up, but we'll hit each one of them, all right?
Of the Virgin Isis Mary. His birth was accompanied by a star in the east, and upon his birth he was adored by 3 kings. At the age of 12, he was a prodigal child teacher, and at the age of 30, he was baptized by a figure known as Anup, and thus began his ministry. Horus had 12 disciples he traveled about with, performing miracles such as healing the sick and walking on water. Horus was known by many gestural names such as the Truth, the Light, God's Anointed Son, the Good Shepherd, the Lamb of God, and many others. After being betrayed by Typhon, Horus was crucified, buried for 3 days, and thus resurrected.
All right. So we get this born on December 25th, right? There's no evidence of a birth on the 25th. In traditional festivals, the Multicultural Encyclopedia places Horus's birth sometime in November, right? Yeah. So we're already starting off wrong. Plutarch, actually, if we want to go back to history, Plutarch places it near the solstice, but never an exact date on that. So I don't think the Bible ever mentions a date for Jesus' birth anyway, so I don't know why this comparison is even being made. Tyler?
I had to drop out there for a second, but I don't really have anything on the date, but I don't know if you guys talked about being born of the Virgin yet. That's what I have stuff on.
Okay. Yeah, so December 25th. David covered all the points that I wanted to say. Yeah, so according to Egypt, we've got different versions. Again, some of them post-date Jesus. Never is it December 25th that he's born on. Secondly, even if Horus was born on December 25th, for the sake of argument, that's not a parallel to Jesus, because the Bible, nowhere does the Bible say that Jesus was born on December 25th. And in fact, the hints are he was born sometime in autumn or spring, right? Because shepherds are out. They wouldn't have been out in the fields on December 25th. It would have been too cold, as some biblical scholars have argued. So the point is here, not only is it not true, but even if it was true, it's a moot point, because the Bible doesn't say Jesus was born on December 25th. So you can't establish a parallel. That didn't come in until centuries later.
Right. So he was also born of a virgin, Tyler.
Yeah, so Isis Mary, I like how he kind of throws that in there very subtly. Isis Mary, but every single source I've read makes claims contrary to Zeitgeist. So first of all, the name Mary, M-E-R-I, is never found in regards to Isis' name. But to get to the birth narrative, in one version, after Osiris is murdered and dismembered by Set, Isis sets out to retrieve all of Osiris's body parts. Problem is, she can't find his penis, since it was eaten by a catfish or a crab in some versions. But like you said, David, bringing up Plutarch, according to Plutarch's account, Isis uses her magic powers to resurrect Osiris and fashions a phallus in order to conceive her son. However, older versions of the story actually have the penis of Osiris surviving, but either way, the conception of Horus involves sexual intercourse, just like Dale's awesome cartoon pointed out.
Right on. Dale?
Yeah, once again, Tyler kind of nailed it. So again, he wasn't born of a virgin. Everywhere we have stories about the conception of Horus, it's through sexual intercourse. As Tecton TV's cartoon there had it, that's kind of the most common thing. I myself was in Egypt. I had a tour guide who was an Egyptologist. I saw that slab with my own eyes, kind of thing, of the story of Horus. There are also stories about Horus's conception. Sorry, not Horus's conception, but in the womb before Osiris and Isis. So Osiris is Horus's daddy, Isis is Horus's mom. Even before they were born, there are some Egypt myths where they have sex in the womb before they're born, kind of thing. So yeah, Isis was not a virgin at the time she conceived. Horus, there are no myths at all. Nowhere is she called Isis Mary. That's just totally made up. Yeah, I think that's it in terms of the virgin birth thing. So yeah.
So what about the three kings? He had three kings visit him on his birth.
No sources that I've researched mention anything. Not well. Let's talk about a couple things here. So nothing that I've read mentions anything about a star in the east or being adored by three kings. In fact, most of the gods of Egypt sided with Horus in his battles with Set. And so where this talks about three kings, I really don't know. But nothing about him being a teacher at the age of 12, and really nothing about a baptism.
Yeah, I'll just say. So once again, Tyler's totally right. There's no three kings at all in the literature. And David, maybe back up just so people can see those claims if you can. Or
I can't right now.
Okay.
It's giving me problems. That's why it took me a while to get back there.
Okay, so no problem. So yeah, there are no three kings. Secondly, this is another case of, well, let's pretend Horus did have three kings attend his birth. Who cares? The Bible doesn't claim that Jesus had three kings. They're wise men,
right,
and it doesn't assign a number. So that's again
right.
An F thing. It fails.
Yeah, and that was another big problem I had with it. Is like, okay, well, the Bible never talks about three kings either. So what do we do with that? But what was the other one? He was crucified.
Oh, okay.
Right? What else do
Dale,
we got?
You have this one.
You want to go to crucified next? Okay, so yeah. So
what did you have?
Well, I think you performed miracles. I had something to say.
Okay, go ahead.
So yeah, so in Egyptology, no, Horus never committed any miracles at all during his ministry. He was never a teacher. That was another one of the points. Nor was he a teacher at the age of 12. That's nonsense. There is in some of the myths, there are stories about Horus as a child and stuff like that, performing some miracles as a child, not as a teacher, but it's through the magic of Isis, his mother, and stuff like that. But again, it's not attached to some kind of adult teaching ministry like it is with Jesus. So that's just totally, that's kind of like a quarter truth or something like that. But again, as an adult, Horus never did miracles or had a ministry or something like that.
Right on. Tyler?
I don't have anything about miracles, but as far as the 12 disciples of Horus go, or the Shimsu Hiru. So I was actually doing some research on this last night, and man, for some reason his name has escaped me. David, I think you interviewed him, the guy who did Cold Case Christianity.
J. Warner Wallace.
J. Warner Wallace, actually. So on his website, there he talks about instead of 12 disciples or the Shimsu Hiru, he talks about 4. Now, maybe I disagree with him on this, but let me just quote Dr. Andrea Sinclair, who holds a master's in the late Bronze Age Eastern Mediterranean Near Eastern archaeology and a doctorate in Egyptology, specializing in iconography and cultural interconnection. She says, quote, "Magical pasts are attractive to humans and the Egyptians of 1200 BCE, 300 BCE, were as receptive to myth, fantasy, and tales of idyllic past as the millions who subscribe to pseudo-history websites and hungrily buy their embellishments of meager evidence. But the Egyptians had a better excuse. This was their belief system, how they thought the universe worked. We don't have this excuse. Although I must confess, the Shimsu Hiru are a perfect opportunity for ringing those pseudo cash registers, as there's very little actual evidence of them if you ignore the out-of-date text that fraudsters rely on to vamp up their stories. All we really know, now here's the important part, all we really know is that the ancient Egyptians, like nearly any other culture, believed their mythical early kings were gods or divine spirits of the royal dead, and beyond that, little else. So you can basically make anything up under those circumstances, like the followers of Horus were initiates of an elite academy of astrologists at Heliopolis, as Graham Hancock and Robert Bevels claim. They can be reptilian Illuminati aliens, as Chris Thompson states. Alchemists of an advanced civilization from 10,000 BCE, as Andrew Collins and William Henry state. Keepers of alien sacred knowledge, as Andrew Collins again, and Ancient Pages report, and the list goes on. And due to the lack of any images to put with these stories, you can instead pad them out with fan fiction artwork that looks like it was stolen straight out of a computer game, or more likely, Pinterest. He goes on to say this, the last thing. Seriously, guys, stop believing books written in 1900 are accurate, and to those pseudos who are still citing obsolete translations from 1905 and esoteric nonsense from 1923, upgrade your sources, you lazy and cheap expletive. Might I also add Zeitgeist to that list, Dr. Sinclair?
One thing I want to add about the 12, you reminded me, Tyler. So you are right about the 4 followers, but they were a specific type. He also had 16 followers as well of a different type.
Okay.
So
yeah, they were metal workers.
There's an Egypt name. I don't know what it is offhand, but that's a total of 20 followers, 4 of one type, 16 of another. The way Zeitgeist does, 16 minus 4 equals 12. That's how these guys get the 12. This is the twisted logic.
So you want to hear something funny to that, Dale? So in this article that I just quoted, and I'll post a link for anybody to go read the description, she says in the earliest sources, those blacksmiths or metal workers or even the followers, the Shimsu Hiru, they don't exist in the earlier sources. This came later as a later invention. So
yeah,
but I'll link you to the article.
Yeah, Tyler, also to back up that point, though, it's so funny you mentioned that because they predicate that. They go with it because what type of figure doesn't have a following of some sort?
Yeah.
You know?
We got followers.
But here's the problem is that, they're relating this to Christianity, right? So it's abundantly clear, right? They're attacking Christ. Right, they're not attacking any other religion. They're not doing anything like that. They're going straight after the Christian religion, right?
Sure.
Does all this 12, the number 12? Why are you comparing it to a zodiac when Israel's history would be what they would have used versus a zodiac sign? And even if Israel used these zodiac signs, whatever. The notion is that the 12 disciples reflect the 12 tribes of Judah, Israel's history, not necessarily linking with Osiris or even the zodiac.
One thing so you're getting ahead, like that's coming up in the video.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, they compare the 12 tribes and stuff like that. That it's all the 12 signs of the zodiac. But number one, we know for a scientific, historically proven fact, the zodiac, the 12 constellations of the zodiac didn't exist until in Babylon in 500 BC. The 12 tribes of Israel predate that by centuries. Nobody doubts that. Even biblical minimalist atheists and skeptics will admit that the 12 tribes predate the 12 signs of the zodiac. But again, that's coming up later in the video as one of their claims and stuff. So
I was going to say the number 12 revolves around Israel's history. You got two numbers that really stand out. That's 12 and 7, right? But notice in the entire Zeitgeist film, you don't see anything mentioned about the number 7, but yet it's this 12 that keeps popping up. And you're right, Dale. He relates it straight to the zodiac sign, and which you just perfectly said that didn't exist until centuries after Israel's religion was already established.
Bingo. What about Horus being born in a cave?
Born in a cave.
Horus was born in the swamps. Okay,
There you go. That was who is it? James Fraser is the one that tells us that Horus was built in the swamp or born in a swamp.
I think so. I don't have the quote right off.
I think there's a lot of these guys actually born in a swamp.
Well, and here's the thing too. You got to think whenever it comes to Egyptology and Egyptian myths, there are multiple handfuls of versions of the story, right? Which makes the Bible even that much more special. We have manuscripts, and David and I have talked about this on the show multiple times. We have over 5,800 and probably getting close to 6,000 now Greek manuscripts that all tell the same story. They all tell the same narrative. It doesn't change over time, and multiple versions keep getting added to it.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have a didactic. I mean, they didn't have a set theology. And all people could do is piece together and speculate, really, So it blows my mind. It blows my mind.
They were some good storytellers. I'll tell that.
Yeah, and they changed. I mean, they didn't have a controlled oral tradition, But I do want to talk about the crucifixion, right?
I have David. I have something to share on the crucifixion part. If you want to see that for minutes. It's only like a couple minutes, but it's the same.
You want me to take this off?
Oh, yeah. I guess only one person can share at a time.
Yeah.
That's showing up?
Yep. There you go.
Okay. So this is about the crucifixion thing.
It's muted, Dale.
I was going to say I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I can't hear it, Dale.
You can't hear it?
No, it's muted on our end.
Okay, so maybe stop sharing and then why could you guys hear okay, so present, share screen. Is there a share sound tab?
No, it should go automatic.
Share system audio. Here it is.
There you
go. Okay. You guys can hear it? You can hear it?
Yeah.
Yep. Got it.
Oh, yeah? Well, I got you on at least one parallel, Horus. I see it right here in this picture of you.
Yeah, what about that?
Oh, it's nothing. She's just going to say...
Don't try to get out of this holding. You can clearly see in this picture that Horus was crucified.
Crucified? What? I say, what the heck does crucified mean?
Oh, it's a form of punishment for criminals that won't be invented for another few hundred years. One where basically you're nailed to some wood or something and hoisted upright, so that you suffer a slow, agonizing death.
And that's what you think's happening to me in that picture?
Well...
Sorry, little lady. What I'm doing in that picture is stretching my arms out like a hawk. Doing my morning stretch, don't you know? Keeps your limbs limber. You just get through that bonnet of yours.
I know that. What I'm saying is later Christians adapted the motif for their own purposes.
Oh, yes, of course. That's your handy-dandy excuse anytime one of your parallels is debunked.
All right, so there you go. That's yeah. Kind of.
So yeah, that's a Deborah Murdoch thing. She's the one that draws parallels between being cruciformed and actually being crucified. That the cruciform where the gods hold out their arms and stuff is where Christians got the idea of crucifixion, that Jesus probably never was crucified, which I don't see how she could even come up with that. I mean, crucifixion is probably one of the best attested things in history, you know, as far as dealing with Christ, you know. So yeah, Tyler.
Nah, I mean, I ain't got nothing else to add. So maybe for our listeners, but I had originally thought that crucifixion was invented by the Romans, but I was found to be wrong about that. So it actually comes from Syria. Some scholars think Assyria, but then later on it was introduced to the Greek culture and then Hellenized. You know, in the Hellenization era, that's where the Romans actually picked it up. So I thought I had heard somewhere before that Romans had been crucifixion, but I guess that's not true. So
Right on. Right on. I think we can move on, guys, to Addis.
Let's do
He was
Addis,
adored by
the
3
vegetation
kings.
god.
At the age of 12, he was a prodigal child teacher. At the age of 30,
Nope.
he was baptized by a figure known as Anup, and thus began his ministry. Horace
Pause.
had 12 disciples he traveled about with, performing miracles such as healing the sick and walking.
Okay, so real quick,
Yeah, Tyler.
just quick. So there is a figure, my knowledge of Dale, maybe you can add a little bit more input to this, that Anna the baptizer, I think skeptics point to this person and say, well, see, here's Anna the baptizer. But the problem is that in the accounts of Horace and all the different versions that there is no link between Horace and Anna ever even meeting. So to say that he was baptized, it again, another false claim that's just kind of stacking up now in the lies being reported. But Dell, I didn't know if you had any info on that or any more info on that.
Yeah, he was associated with embalming and funerals, right? He was a jackal-headed god and stuff like that. So he was not. He had nothing to do with baptizing people and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's this book called The Gods of Egypt, right? Written by Alan Gardner.
Good movie, by the way.
Yeah, Alan Gardner, and he thinks that this claim is speculative on and has to actually do with Anubis and his ritual cleaning, which actually doesn't take place in this reality. So he thinks that's kind of where that came from, that speculation came from.
I was going to say there is a lot of similarities between Anna and Anubis.
Yes, exactly.
So
exactly. So yeah, but yeah, good book, Gods of Egypt. But anyways, yeah, let's go.
That is, it is.
Horus was known by many gestural names such as the Truth, the Light, God's Anointed Son, the Good Shepherd, the Lamb of God, and many others.
Not so much.
After being betrayed
No
by
source.
Typhon, Horus was crucified,
Heresy.
buried for 3 days, and thus resurrected. These attributes of Horus, whether original or not, seem to permeate many cultures of the world, for many other gods are found to have the same general mythological structure. Attis of Phrygia, born of the Virgin Nana on December 25th, crucified, placed in a tomb, and after 3 days was resurrected.
Pause it. All right. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, Attis was worshipped in Phrygia, Asia Minor, later throughout the Roman Empire, where he was made a solar deity. And guess what, guys? 2nd century AD. Attis, however, was not born of a virgin, as Zeitgeist claims, but rather he is the offspring of his mother, Nana or Nana, and the hermaphroditic demon, Agdistis or Sybil, as Dell's cartoon claimed a while ago. The story goes that the gods tricked Agdistis into swallowing a sleeping potion, and after succumbing to the effects of the potion, since Agdistis or Sybil, as I will call this demon both names during this, had both male and female genitalia. So the gods tied his male genitalia to his foot. He castrates himself when he awakes and stands up, and his genitalia actually falls to the earth, fertilizing the ground. An almond tree grew where it fell, and Nana, the daughter of the river god Sangarius, picks almonds from the tree and eats them. Nana then becomes pregnant with Attis. Zeitgeist also claims that Attis was crucified. The fact of the matter was that according to the cult of Cybele, so the followers of Agistus or Cybele, Sybil actually kills Attis, and not by crucifixion. During Attis's wedding, as Dale's video explained earlier, because of the jealousy that fueled Sybil, she drove the bride, the daughter of King Midas in some stories, Attis and King Midas mad. Attis and King Midas then castrates himself in front of the wedding guests, and because of the self-inflicted injury, Attis dies. However, the Romans say that Attis died by being gored by a boar that was sent by Zeus. Zeitgeist also claims that Attis was resurrected, but this is simply untrue. Sybil had asked Zeus after the fact to bring Attis back to life, but Zeus only had the ability to preserve Attis's body to make sure it did not decompose or decay. Another version of the story states that Attis was turned into a tree. Also, in my research, I have not found in any account a death period of 3 days. There was a 5-day festival in honor of Attis, in which on the 4th day was when the rebirth was celebrated, but it does not specify how long Attis was dead until he was reborn. But it would make sense that in the story of Attis that a rebirth element was introduced, given the fact that Attis was a vegetation god. The connection between his death and rebirth was thought to symbolize the cycle by which vegetation is reduced in the summer and fall months and returns in the spring.
Very good. Dale?
Yeah, so Tyler kind of gave all my tips and secrets and stuff there. So yeah, no, that's good. You were very thorough in covering the history. I guess one thing
it shows that we're consistent, though, right?
For sure. Yeah, we're finding this about the almond tree. I thought I was going to be special in revealing that, but no. But
sorry.
Did you talk about so obviously the way he dies, the part of the video that I mentioned was about, he was crucified, it died, and 3 days later he rose from the dead. That's complete bunk. So he did die, but he died through castration after his girlfriend was killed at the wedding. He cut off his manhood and died that way. There is no mention of a resurrection at all. In one of the versions, at best, all you get is that, his hair continued to grow and his pinky finger would flick. That was it. He was still dead as a doornail. So yeah, he did not rise from the dead. That's just a lie kind of thing, or an exaggeration at best.
Right. And also you got to realize the cult of Attis actually evolved in response to Christianity. So there's that.
That's right. It didn't even come. The story there didn't even come about until 150 AD or after that. Sorry, after 150 AD. So the pagans are copying the Christians, I would say, if you want to.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that goes on that's just not stressed enough, and that's where a lot of this anti-holiday crowd comes in, because God forbid that Christians have their own traditions that other people copied from.
Yeah. What's interesting is that they actually address that Zeitgeist, and basically they make Justin Martyr out to look like a fool, because what was his main reason for saying that the pagans would steal from Christianity is that the devil made him do it, right? Whenever Justin was actually, and David, I'm sure you have more on this than I do, but whenever Justin was actually trying to show the consistencies between the two or multiple religions that the Romans held to, right? He was evangelizing and saying that, look, guys, what we're saying is not some out of the blue, just ridiculous stuff. Part of these things are actually in your stories themselves. It was an evangelizing technique.
It was, and they never fully quoted the quote,
of course,
because he goes on to say, but very different, right? So I mean, it's wrong on so many levels, and it's cherry picking on so many levels. Honestly, guys, this is all I got. I could keep going through Krishna if you guys want to, but I mean, this follows a similar thread.
I just have a question for Dale. So when in the video, we haven't got to it yet. Maybe we'll get to it next time. But he talks about Orion's belt, and it was called the Three Kings. My question, Dale, is, do you know if that's factual? I mean, I'm sure, because everything this dude's spitting out is in some way, shape, or form painted. But have you ever done any research on that, or David, do you guys know if Orion's Belt was ever called the Three Kings?
Matter of fact, it is. It's still called the Three
Really?
Kings in places like Puerto Rico and other places like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The thing I was going to add about that, because yeah, if David gets to that part in the video, you'll see. So it's the way they say it is the sun around December 25th is here, and then there's the star in the east, right? And then there's those three stars on Orion's belt that they're called the Three Kings, and they're following the star of the east, going towards the sun. So, well, that's the virgin birth story going to Bethlehem. The Three Kings go to Bethlehem and stuff like that. But if you actually look at the astronomically, right, on December 25th, it's a little bit off. Again, we're not. You'll see it in the video. It's not properly aligned with the sun. A better date would have been in November. In late November, the stars would have been better aligned if you wanted to make up that story and say that's where that's coming from. And there's also a problem with that star of the east. From what I remember, it was never called that. I think it's Sybaris or something like that. The star is named Sybaris, so that part's made up as well. But yeah,
I know, Dale, that before we bounce out, it sounds like we're getting close to winding down. But Dale, you had made and I want to give you the glory of it. So you had made a comment about how there's kind of two parts to the first part of the Zeitgeist movie, how they're trying to debunk Christianity. And you had said in the second part that they try to connect the story of Christianity with astrology. Is there anything that you would want to say about that? And I know we didn't get to it per se in the video, but that's like the next section. And so I was wondering if you had anything prepared that you wanted to share with us and with our audience concerning why Christianity is in no way, shape, or form linked to astrology and the ways Zeitgeist lays it out.
So astronomy, right? Not astrology. If I said
I'm sorry. My apologies.
So yeah, so basically the Zeitgeist movie, and we'll get to it, I guess, in the coming weeks when we get to that part of the video. But so the first part is what you've seen, right? They take all these pagan gods and they say, oh, look at all these parallels with Jesus. The obvious implication is Christianity got these ideas from the pagan myths or were influenced by them to some extent. But the second aspect is kind of like an overall explanatory hypothesis and saying, look, all of these pagan myths are actually explainable by the fact, not that they just copied each other, but they're getting it from the stars themselves, the movements of the sun and certain positions of stars and stuff like that, or constellations, and it's all connected to the zodiac and stuff like that. So that's the second part of his hypothesis, is that, well, where did the ancients get all of these ideas for virgin birth and stuff like that? Basically from the sun and the stars, watching the night sky and watching the movement of the sun over the course of the year. And yeah, we're going to find out that's based on a bunch of nonsense and, again, outright lies. They're just wrong on the science for a lot of it as well.
Right on. David, take us home.
You're muted.
Awesome,
hard
guys.
to take us home when you're muted.
I am home. No, I'm just kidding. I'm home.
We all are home.
Guys, it's been great. This has been fun. Like I said, this is to just get some information out there, just so people can rest assured that, Christianity isn't borrowing from pagan religions. I mean, it's an anathema to a monotheist to borrow from polytheism, and just try to do that. I mean, it's just, at least for me, and whenever I've studied, and studying, I find that Christians actually have their own traditions that they've made throughout the years, and certain sections of them, certain sects have their own traditions versus other ones have their own traditions, but they're all Christian. They're not just grabbing from pagans and trying to incorporate stuff like you've been told by people like Alexander Hislop and other. I don't even want to call them historians, bad historians,
Fraudsters. Let's use the
or
word
poets.
that
Yeah,
Dr.
get your history
Sinclair
from poets,
used.
please. Please don't get your history from poets. But yeah, so like
I like
a lot
fraudsters
goes into
better.
it. A lot of it goes into it. But next time, guys, we're going to continue to talk. We're just going to, like I said, we're winding down the year. We're just trying to have fun instead of just taking off for the holidays. We want to be able to give you guys a little something to chew on. So, Tyler, why don't you tell everybody to stay safe and all that?
Stay safe and all that. No, we got some good stuff coming up in 2023. So I've already released it, and it's something that I think people have been wanting to see now for a little bit. And so we have actually got Dr. Tim Stratton and Dr. Michael Preciado. I cannot say it in the right way. Please forgive me. Hopefully we'll have Eli Ayala on soon to be able to pronounce it in the correct way. I can't roll my R's, guys, and so I would just do disservice if I would try to pronounce Dr. Preciado's last name in the correct dialect. And so, but we do have those two guys together, and so we're not going to say that it's going to be anytime soon, but we are shooting to get them together for a formal debate during 2023. So I want to say we're thinking maybe June, July-ish, because we're going all out with this one, y'all, and we want to bring you the best of the best, and we want to bring the best debate on this subject to all the social media platforms. And so we have got that in the works. We're going to take our time with it and hopefully present a debate that will be a resource for many years to come. We also have our gospel documentary that we will be starting soon, hopefully. If people don't stop scheduling with us, no, we love people to schedule shows like this, but we do plan on starting our gospel documentary very, very soon. You can still donate to that cause. We still have all of our donations kept locked up and tight, and we're saving that for advertising money to be able, once we get this documentary done, to be able to promote it and share it with as many people as the Holy Spirit will allow. So if you would like to donate to that cause, please hit myself up, hit up David. We can give you links. I'll actually post a link whenever I get internet back. We'll post a link in the description to where if you would like to make a financial contribution to our cause for our gospel documentary in a time where things like Zeitgeist and just Christianity is being attacked on all fronts. We need the gospel to go to as many people as we can. And we love working with people that have that same mindset, that like Dale, like everybody that's been on the show for the most part, that has that same mindset of wanting to get the gospel out. Everything that we agree on as the whole unit that is in Christ's body. That's what defines us, I think, as Christians, as belief, trust in the good news that Jesus Christ is King, that He died for our sins, and that He is in heaven right now at the right hand of the Father, interceding for everyone who will come to Him through faith. And I just, He lifted me up out of the darkness, man, and for that, like, I'm forever indebted. And so I do my testimony on another show, so you can find that and get all the details of exactly how that happened. But y'all, it's been fun. Dale, it's been a pleasure. Is there anything that you would like to tell our listeners before we all head off, and then I'll close us out?
Yeah. So again, I was kind of scanning over the comments, and I see Ringo. He's saying he's never heard of this movie, and a couple other people were interested, but they were saying they didn't understand it. The faithist atheist, for example. So Richard, yeah, I don't know if he's still around, but what I'll do is I will, when I post up my version of this episode, I will post up a bunch of sources, who go over the Zeitgeist movie in great detail, as well as the Zeitgeist movie itself, if you haven't seen it. So there will be sources on realseekerministries.wordpress.com, so you can take it further than what we've done here if you want.
Please do. And I'll grab those sources as well, Dell, whenever you post them, and post them in our description so people have them on both platforms. The more the better, right?
Absolutely.
And so with that, guys, David, it's been fun. Dell, it's been a pleasure having you on, brother. And we will see you next time on Faith Unaltered. But until then, good night, God bless, and stay like Christ.